something so improbable, the impossible has happened.
5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow! In your life have you seen anything like that?
Hey DJ, what's going on? I'm Chandler, and this is Chandler With Sports. Welcome to a special edition of this all-crazy sports newscast.
Hey everybody, I'm Chandler With Sports, and this is the Sport Report.
Chandler With Sports is how he wants to go. With is his middle name, Sports his last name.
At the Sport Report, we pride ourselves on
neutral,
down the middle coverage
with an analytical spin.
We remove the bias so you can think about a team without any outside opinion.
No crazy points for attention.
No power rankings.
No opinions.
Just sports.
We're going to throw out the bias and throw in some facts. We're out to change the game. So without further ado,
here we go. Hit it, Blaze.
This is the Sport Report.
Hey everybody, I'm Chandler With Sports. This is the Sport Report. We're back. We know we've been gone for 2 weeks. I lost my voice yelling at the television during the wildcard games in the NFL, and we were unable to record a podcast last week. So we're back. We've got some news from the NFL. The divisional round was this past weekend. The NHL and the NBA are continuing to roll through their regular seasons. Soccer is back in full form with Bundesliga finally back in Germany and the rest of the other major leagues in Europe. We've also got some skiing news. The Australian Open is happening down under in tennis, and some college basketball news and notes that might surprise you, to say the least. We're going to try and keep this podcast a little bit shorter. We know we've been a little bit long the last few weeks. We're going to go back to our roots a little bit, change some things up in the new year. We've also got a couple things up our sleeve here over the next few weeks as the fall sports wind down and transition into the winter sports. So, without further ado, let's hit it with Around the NFL.
Yellow! Oh, Leon left!
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. How in the world?
Oh, my goodness.
Around the NFL.
While we were gone, the NFL had their wild card weekend. In an NFC West divisional battle, the 2-seeded San Francisco 49ers defeated the 7th-seeded Seattle Seahawks 41-23. Also in the NFC wild card, the 6th-seeded New York Giants defeat the 3rd-seeded Minnesota Vikings in Minneapolis 31-24. Kirk Cousins falls to 12-21 in primetime and playoff games in his career. Finally, the 5th-seeded Dallas Cowboys defeat the 4th-seeded and NFC South champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers 31-14. They would move on to take on the San Francisco 49ers. That's the NFC. We'll get to the divisional round in a second. Also in the wild card, the Los Angeles or San Diego Chargers blew a 27-point lead against Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars and fell to the Jags 31-30. The Miami Dolphins kept it really close against the Buffalo Bills, but the Bills eked out a 3-point win, 34-31 in Orchard Park. And finally, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens did battle in an AFC North battle. Well, there's a lot of battles this week. 24-17, the Bengals would win that one. 3 divisional matchups, and of those 3 divisional matchups, at the end of the day, the 3 division champions would end up winning their respective wildcard matchups. On to the divisional round, the Kansas City Chiefs, behind an injured Patrick Mahomes, defeat the Jacksonville Jaguars 27-20. Philadelphia Eagles 38-7 winners over divisional rival New York Giants. Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts got injured during the game, but he continued to play like Mahomes did for the Chiefs, and the Eagles rallied behind him and win by 31. Cincinnati Bengals become the only road team to win a game this divisional weekend, 27-10 winners over the Buffalo Bills in a rematch of the Week 17 game that was supposed to take place before the unfortunate injury to Damar Hamlin. Bengals win this one. They'll take on the Chiefs in the AFC Championship on Sunday. In the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers defeat the Dallas Cowboys 19-12. For those wondering, no, it is not a scoregami, meaning it has happened before. It's actually happened 10 times in history, 4 times since the turn of the millennium. Of those 10 previous instances, or 9 previous instances, the Cowboys had been involved in 2 of those games, and the Niners involved in 1 of them. Both teams were involved in this score. The Niners move on to take on the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game, which will be played in Philadelphia. So at 3 p.m. Eastern on Fox, San Francisco 49ers at the Philadelphia Eagles, and at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS, Cincinnati Bengals at the Kansas City Chiefs. Those are the conference championships taking place on Sunday. All right, to the other sports that are happening around the world. In Melbourne, Australia, down under, it's the first major of the year in the tennis world, the Australian Open, and the number 1 and 2 seeds are both out in the men's and women's draws. That is the first time in Grand Slam history since 1968, which is the Open era, that has happened. So it's wide open in both draws. We'll see who advances. There are 3 Americans in the quarterfinals in the men's draw, and Jessica Pegula is alive in the women's draw. So, yeah, very, very interesting stuff going on down under. In skiing, Michaela Schifrin has finally broken Lindsey Vogn's American record of 82 wins. She's now got 83 wins. The record is 86 for those keeping track at home. It is possible that she could break that record as well as Vogn's record of 4 World Cup skiing titles. We'll see how that plays out over the course of the coming weeks. In soccer, there was some gigantic news. Serie A champions Juventus in Italy were docked 15 points. Yeah, 15 points for breaching transfer rules in Italy. And they were in second place at the time. Now they're in 10th place with 23 points. In Italy, Napoli lead Milan by 12 points, 50-38. Lazio, Inter, and Roma, 3rd, 4th, and 5th on 37 points. Atalanta holding on to that final Europa League spot in 6th on 35 points. We've got other leagues. Bundesliga is back from their winter break. Bayern Munich drew to Cologne earlier today. They are on 36 points. They lead Red Bull Leipzig, who are on 32 points. Both have played 17 matches. Eintracht Frankfurt, Union Berlin, and Freiburg, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, all on 30 points. In La Liga, Barcelona are on 44 points, Real Madrid 41 points, Real Sociedad on 38 points after 18 matches. Barcelona and Real Madrid have played 17 matches, so it looks like it's going to be an El Clasico fight to the finish in La Liga. There are still 21 matches to be played. In France, PSG have some title contenders. Lens are on 44 points. They're 3 points behind PSG, who are on 47 points, officially halfway through the season in France. Marseille, Monaco, and Rennes, 42, 37, and 37 to close out the top 5 in Ligue 1. Finally, we can't forget about the Premier League. Manchester United defeated Manchester City 2-1. They scored 2 goals in the final 25 minutes of the match, one of which was very controversial for offsides. Very interesting decision to give the goal to Manchester United. They would end up winning the match 2-1, in part due to that goal. The following week, this past weekend, they took on league leaders Arsenal, who defeat Manchester United 3-2 behind a brace from Eddie Nketiah. So Arsenal lead Manchester City by 5 points. The Gunners also have a game in hand. Newcastle United, Manchester United, 39 points in 3rd and 4th. That closes out the Champions League places. Tottenham Hotspur on 21 matches, a match ahead of the next 3 teams above them. They've got 36 points, so it's going to get very bunched up towards the end of the season, but is it Arsenal's year? Well, we'll see. We'll see, Gunners fans. We tend to have a Sport Report curse, where we tend to say something good about a team and they start to fall apart. James Madison, Philadelphia Phillies, Miami Dolphins, Houston Cougars, a few others. So we'll see how this plays out. For those wondering where Chelsea is, they are in 10th place on 29 points. They've had a really poor run of form. 2 losses in their last 5, as well as 2 draws. They've got Fulham coming up. Everton also sacked Chelsea legend Frank Lampard as their manager the other night. Very sad to see him go, but Everton are in the drop, meaning they could get relegated if the season were to end today. They've got 4 losses in their last 5. They're coming up against the league leaders Arsenal at the weekend. Everton have 15 points. They're in 19th place. So that covers soccer. Let's go to college basketball, where Kansas suffered their second largest loss. They lost by 23 points to TCU. So their second largest loss in the Bill Self era at home. First time they've lost back-to-back games in the state of Kansas since 1989, when they lost to Kansas State and Missouri at home in late January and early February. This time they lost to K-State in Manhattan, where K-State plays their basketball, and TCU at Fog Allen, where Kansas plays their basketball, hence the second largest home loss. Kansas has also lost 3 games in a row after falling to Baylor by 7 last night, Monday night, in Waco. So the Jayhawks, the defending champions in college basketball, need to get it together. There's a lot of teams and a lot of things moving around in terms of rankings. As we say that, we should mention Georgetown. Oh my word. Georgetown has finally won a Big East Conference game. Yeah. They'd lost 29 games in a row against Big East opponents. They finally win a game, snap the losing streak for the first time since March 13th of 2021, which is when they beat Creighton in the Big Ten or the Big East Conference tournament final to get into the big dance that year, where they fell to Colorado. Georgetown wins by 5, 81-76 over DePaul. So keep in mind, as March Madness is, I believe, 7 weeks away, there's a lot of teams that are vying for, various seeds in the tournament. Kansas could repeat. Alabama's trying to break their way into the number 1 seed line. Purdue looks really good. Tennessee, Houston, Kansas, UCLA, Arizona, and you could even throw into the mix Gonzaga, who lost a really close game to Loyola Marymount the other night. First time they lost to an unranked opponent in 76 games, believe it or not. And they lost a really good home winning streak as well. Crazy stuff. But yeah, there's probably 10 or 11 teams right now that could legitimately win the national championship. That'll be whittled down to 4 or 5, which, again, we're not going to say, this team's going to win it all. We're not going to tell you that's not what we do here at Sport Report. We're neutral. We're down the middle. We're just saying that these are the top teams in terms of the rankings, in terms of the statistics, net rankings, whatever you want to, Ken Palm, whatever you want to call it, or whatever metric you want to use. Those are the top teams right now. So keep an eye out for those teams. Again, it will be whittled down, and teams will start to make their cases for where they belong in the tournament bracket as March Madness approaches. If you want up-to-date bracketology, you can go to ESPN, you can go to CBS, you can go to Yahoo, you can go blog on the bracket even. We've got our own little bracketology going on the Sport Report website at thesprt.wordpress.com. We're still working on the main website here in a few weeks. But for now, you can follow us on that. You can follow other bracketologists throughout the sports world. All right, to the NBA, where it's really heating up. The season is starting to wind down. LeBron James is starting to catch Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's fewer than 200 points away from breaking Kareem's scoring record of 38,389 points. The Boston Celtics lead the Philadelphia 76ers by 3.5 games, Milwaukee Bucks by 4, and the Nets by 4.5 in the Eastern Conference. In the Western Conference, the Denver Nuggets are 34-14. They lead the Memphis Grizzlies by 2.5 games. And then it's the Kings, Pelicans, Clippers, and Mavericks, and Suns, and Jazz, and Timberwolves, and Warriors, and Thunder. And why do we mention these many teams? Because from the Kings down to the Lakers all the way down in 13th, that's 3rd to 13th, those 11 teams are separated by 6 games. Whew. It's going to get very interesting. The top 10 teams in each conference make the playoffs at the end of the season, but each team has around 30 to 35 games remaining in their season, the regular season ends in the middle of April. In hockey, Jared Bednar becomes the winningest coach in Colorado Avalanche history with his 266th victory. The Avalanche defeat the Capitals 3-2, in which Alex Ovechkin came back from an injury, scored his 31st goal of the year. He's trying to catch the great one, Wayne Gretzky's scoring record. It's possible that he'll get there in 3 or 4 seasons if Ovechkin continues to play. In the standings, well, the Atlantic Division has already decided their matchups, essentially. There's about 35 to 40 games remaining in the hockey season, which will also end in mid-April. The Boston Bruins are in first place in the Eastern Conference, and actually they're in first place in the entire NHL by at least 14 points. They have 80 points in total through 47 games. For those keeping track at home, the record is held by the Montreal Canadiens, who had 132 points in 80 games way back in 1976-1977. As I was saying, the Atlantic Division, so in each division for the National Hockey League, the top 3 teams advance to the playoffs. The 2nd seed plays the 3 seed in each division, and then the 2 best teams on points that did not already qualify for the playoffs, regardless of division in each conference, would become the 2 wildcard seeds and then play the division champions. So it's weird how they do the formatting for hockey, But if the season ended today, the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning would rematch in what was one of the best series in playoff hockey in a long time from last year. They would rematch in the first round again this year. The Buffalo Sabres are 8 points out of a playoff spot behind the Lightning right now. The Panthers are 9 points behind. Both teams have played more games than the Lightning. That's the Atlantic Division. Boston in first, Toronto and Tampa Bay second and third. In the Metro, in the Eastern Conference, the Carolina Hurricanes, and the New Jersey Devils level on 66 points. New York Rangers would be the third team out of that division on 59 points. Penguins and Capitals are tied for fourth at 56 points. The Penguins have the advantage based on fewer games played as of right now. But those two teams would be the final two wildcard spots in the Eastern Conference for the season to end today. In the Western Conference, the Dallas Stars have 64 points, Winnipeg Jets on 63. Colorado Avalanche have finally found their rhythm. They've won 6 games in a row, and they've got most of their team back on the ice. They're on 55 points in third. The Minnesota Wild on 54 points in fourth. In the Pacific Division, the Vegas Golden Knights have 61 points. The LA Kings on 60. The Seattle Kraken, who were the worst team in the league last year, now have 59 points. The Edmonton Oilers are close behind them with 57 points. Gonna be races to watch in the National Hockey League as the season continues to go. They're coming up on All-Star Weekend this upcoming weekend, so we will not have any hockey results next week, as the standings shouldn't change that much between now and then. We hope to have a couple of hockey correspondents on before the end of the year. We also hope to get David Miller on to help us cover basketball throughout the rest of the season. We'll get him on a few times before the end of the season. Colby Volrath is going to finish out our football. D. Mills is going to transition from football to basketball as we continue with the Sport Report. And the answer to 2 weeks ago's trivia question, who was the last kickoff returner to have 2 kickoff return touchdowns in the same game? It was Leon Washington of the Seattle Seahawks in 2010. All right, that covers us for Sport Report this week. We'll be back next week with the latest in sports.
For now, I'm Chandler.
So let it be written, so let it be done.
Thanks for tuning into the Sport Report today. We'll be back on our next episode with the latest in sports. Right now, we're still working on a website, but if you want to follow us on social media, we are at SR_CWS on Instagram and Twitter. You can also find our podcast on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, you name it. We're on almost every podcast platform.
This podcast is copyrighted by the Sport Report for viewers to understand sports from a news reporting basis. Any other use of this podcast, Sport Report logos, or anything associated with this podcast without the express written consent of Chandler With Sports is strictly prohibited.